You're the protective parent. You've done everything right. You follow the court orders. You've shown up to hearings, evaluations, and endless therapy sessions. And now, here you are again, being told to drag your child to another round of reunification counseling. Even though it's been years. Even though it hasn't worked. Even though the child made it clear they don't feel safe. But the court doesn't listen. They assign a new therapist. They order more sessions. And before you're even allowed to begin, you're told to sign a consent form. For yourself, for your child, for access to records and reports. You hesitate. You know this isn't right. You know it won't help. But if you refuse, you'll be considered uncooperative. You'll risk losing time or even worse, custody. So you sign again. And just like that, it's on the record. Parent willingly participated. Therapy was provided. And no one writes down what really happened. That you were forced. That your child was further traumatized. That you tried to protect them and the system made you look like the problem. Hello and welcome back to Black Sheep Diaries, where the black sheep finally get the mic. Today we're talking about the ugly truth behind the court-ordered reunification therapy and how coerced participation often gets rewritten as consent. Let's first talk about informed consent and what that is. Informed consent means that you are given clear, honest information about what's happening. You understand the risk, the benefit, and your options. And most important, you agree freely. No threats, no pressure, no punishment if you say no. That's what real consent looks like. It protects your right to choose and protects your dignity. You are given clear, understandable explanations of the treatment, the risk, the benefit, the alternatives, and any limits to confidentiality. It means a client has capacity. They are mentally and legally able to make the decision. It means a client acts voluntarily, free of undue pressure, threats, and punishment. It means a client can refuse or withdraw at any time without penalty. In short, the client has a real choice. The signature on the consent form is only valid when it's a product of free will. So let's talk about consent under duress. This is when you're technically agreeing, but only because you've been threatened. Let's dive into this. Maybe the court says, sign this form or you can't see your kids. Do the therapy or we'll hold you in contempt. Refuse and we'll use this against you in custody. That's not a choice. That's coercion in disguise. A signature under pressure isn't real consent. It's survival. In law, consent obtained by duress is invalid. Agreement or permission extracted that way are voidable. Let's look at the definition of duress in contract law. It starts off with the absence of free will. Duress in contract law refers to a situation when one party is forced into an agreement through illegitimate pressures of threat, effectively nullifying their free will. When duress is present, the consent given by one party is not genuine, rendering the contract voidable. The law recognizes that agreement should stem from voluntary, informed decision and protecting individuals from exploitation. That leads us to coercion. Coercion is when someone forces you to do something against your will, using threats, fear, or manipulation. It can be physical, it can be social, it can be psychological. When the courts order counseling or reunification sessions, the therapist acts as an agent of the court. The consent form allows the therapist to communicate with the court, with the other parent, to share records, provide reports that undermine confidentiality, and places the therapist in a role of surveillance. Judges often hold contempt over your head if you don't comply. Refuse and you will find yourself in contempt. You may have fines to pay, jail time, or restricted or loss of custody. In many cases, the parent is told, you can't even have a therapy appointment until you sign the consent form. Thus, you are forced to preemptively waive your rights just to start participation. The trappings of consent, your signature, is a facade. It's an action of survival, not of choice. Now, can we say that forced consent in family court is criminal? Here's the truth. Courts may legally be allowed to order therapy, but that doesn't mean that what they're doing is ethical or even right. In fact, forcing someone to consent under threat goes against everything that therapy even stands for. When a judge threatens a parent into giving up their rights with loss of custody, does that cross a moral line? Maybe even a legal one. I don't know. What do you think? So let's recap. Parents are threatened into signing consent forms. Kids are dragged into more sessions with complete strangers. Therapists become the arms of the court, not protectors of healing. So let's be absolutely clear about what is happening here. A parent and their child are forced into court-ordered therapy. They were not invited. They were not asked. Not offered a choice or even an alternative. Forced. And before that therapy can even begin, the parent must sign a consent consent form, or they can't see their child, or they risk being held in contempt, or even worse, the threat of losing custody. That is not voluntary. That is coercion. But here's the most disturbing part of it all. Once the therapy takes place, no matter how it started, it becomes part of the court record. It's written down, filed, preserved, as if the parent willingly participated. There are no footnotes that say the parent signed under threat. This was done to avoid punishment. This was not a free choice. Instead, it reads like the parent agreed to, the parent participated in, the parent paid for the session, the parent consented. And suddenly, a protective parent, someone who fought for their child's safety, looks like they endured the process that they tried to resist. If an outsider reading that file case at a later time, or a different judge, a new attorney, or a new social worker, to them it looks like the parent went along with it the whole time. And if the parent wants to challenge it down the line, all they have to say is, I was forced into this. I didn't really agree. The system shrugs, well, you signed the consent. This is how the truth gets rewritten. That's how coercion becomes consent on paper. That's how injustice becomes permanent, buried in a file that tells the wrong story. Real consent requires real choice. If you are forced to choose between your child and your rights, that's not a choice. That's legalized coercion. So if you're a parent and this scenario sounds painfully familiar, if you've been dragged through years of court-ordered therapy, forced to sign consent forms you never truly agreed to, if your child has been made to sit through therapy sessions that didn't help, didn't heal, and only made things worse, and now all that's left is a court record that makes it look like you agreed, like you supported it, like it was your choice, then we want to hear from you, because your real story matters. The one that isn't in the therapist report. This podcast was created as a space to speak the truth and to expose the emotional toll the system takes on protective parents and innocent children. If you're ready to share anonymously or publicly, we're ready to listen. Reach out, speak up. Let's build a record that reflects reality, not just legal paperwork.